the coach called me in about 2 days before, or a day before the main draft, and he said, if you slide through the main draft, we're going to take you as a rookie. And so I went home and basically told them. I remember walking home and I was like, geez, like, I don't know how I'm going to tell them this.
All right, welcome to the Aussie Ambitions podcast. We've got an episode for you today in the world of sport, so I think you're going to love this one. We've got a guest with us today. His name's Jesse Joyce. Hey, Jesse, how are you?
Hey, good, thanks. Thanks for having me on.
No worries. So the sport that we mentioned is AFL. A lot of people listening in from overseas might relate to hearing Aussie rules or Aussie rules football. So you've played for 5 years in the professional league here. Based on the Gold Coast. So could you just tell a little bit about what you've been working on?
Yeah, so as you said, I was in the AFL for 5 years with the Gold Coast Suns, local product. So I was at the club for about 11 years when you include my time in the academy. Probably wasn't much of a prospect growing up, but just worked really hard to stay involved in the system. And then come the draft year, I sort of proved myself and was able to pick up a rookie contract. Over the 5 years, played 64 AFL games, and unfortunately last year got delisted and came out the other end with a little bit of an injury as well. So that sucked a little bit, but in the middle of rehabbing that, and I've started with the Southport Sharks as well in the semi-professional league, which will be in the VFL for the first time ever. So I'm still pretty ambitious about my chances of hopefully getting back into the AFL, but in the meantime, it's given me the opportunity to work on what I want to be in probably long term, which is business. And I've been working at PainPod now for a month, learning everything involved there based on customer service and what they have to offer, their demographic and everything. So it's been awesome. It's helped translate what I've learned in my footy career into the business landscape and where I want to take it. Yeah.
Wow. Fantastic. Look, there was a lot there. So I appreciate you coming in and sharing this perspective on it, because I think the life of a professional athlete is not something a lot of people know a lot about. So even everything about, training regime and trying to pushing through, your personal goals, and it's team-based sport, all that. So, and like you mentioned, there's a transition that you made into the business world, and just getting that experience behind your belt as well. I'll just mention the company you mentioned is PainPod and PainPod Australia. Yeah,
PainPod Australia. They're also in the UK and US as well.
Very cool. And so, we just pick up briefly on that. So that is a product that we were checking out the website. Could you tell us a little bit about that type of a product, or what that company does?
Yes, they have a range of devices and accessories. I've obviously been learning about it over the last couple of months, but it has been relevant to me given my rehab with my foot. And so the different devices have a different price range, but they all work on trying to relieve pain and fix and speed up the rehabilitation process through TENS and EMS. So the TENS is the blocking the neural pathways to provide that pain relief, and the EMS is about the muscles contracting so that it can start that rehabilitation process and strengthen those muscles.
Okay, and is that something that's specific to the sporting world, or is that generally across all sorts of pain? People that are experiencing pain?
Well, it is relevant in the sporting world, and there are a couple athletes that do use it, but probably the most common demographic is elder people, just because in their day-to-day they do suffer quite a bit of pain. And what the mission of the company is about trying to promote drug-free lifestyle and not having to rely on drugs. And a lot of the time when you get to that age, drugs just can't fulfill that purpose without becoming a bit of a problem. So we have a lot of testimonials on people that have been having to walking around with walking sticks, and then after a couple of hours on the device at home, they can walk around without the walking stick. Like it's something that sort of fills a gap in their lifestyle that can provide that pain-free lifestyle, which is pretty important with old people.
Interesting. And just to comment on it, like I've got a background in physiology actually, so it's a bit random. I've been doing business for many years, but way back when I studied, it was almost like pre-med and looking at how the body works. And these devices were sort of up and coming, but they seem to have matured a lot in a sense that it's not just one universal device. Like there's versions of the same thing, right? There might be one for your knee. Yeah. Maybe one for your lower back. Is that right?
Yeah. So the devices can work on all different areas. It's probably more the accessories that help with that. The different sizes of pads and have sleeve options as well. So that covers probably knees, elbows, all those sort of different areas. Knees are a pretty common area, but there's also been more devices created. So now PainPod has a heat device, which obviously that pretty heavy on the pain relief side. As I know with footy, heat's probably something that will get you through a game if you've got back spasms or something like that. So, it's the devices have a use for all the areas, but I guess different devices can serve different purposes, and the different pads can also help with that. Yeah.
Yeah. All right. Neat. Look, we might circle back just to see how that might come into play for rehab and just understanding that world. But if we can maybe just go back to the beginning, like yourself as an individual. Like you said, you're sort of long time here on the Gold Coast. And what was your going through the school and getting into the footy world? What was that like? Obviously, was it a balance of trying to go to school or going to school and then working in the sport development for yourself?
Yeah. So for school, we were talking about that before. I was lucky enough. I made the state New South Wales team in under 12s, and that gave me the ability to get a scholarship to PBC High on the Gold Coast, which has a sport excellence program. So for the 5 years I was at high school, I was doing that for a subject, which it probably sped up the development that I was able to make in that time, because in Queensland there's not as many players that are probably up to standard, and so you need a bit of exposure to more time on field to learn the same way that players in Victoria would, which is where everyone is. So with that, I guess I had to just work really hard. There was times where I was playing for 3 different teams, so I'd be playing for school, club, and representative. And to be honest, with school, it probably didn't help that much. There wasn't much homework getting done because I was training 4 nights a week and then playing all weekend. So, it was a bit of a juggle, but part of that process is the reason that I was able to play a lot of AFL in the end, I believe.
Okay. I think a lot of listeners would be thinking about, maybe sports they played growing up. It could be, in their country, it depends. It could be soccer, it could be American football. Yeah. And there's different levels of community support for that kind of thing. Did you feel like that you were just part of a pretty well-established thing, or were you sort of forging a new path? And because AFL is bigger in Victoria, right?
Yeah, in Melbourne.
In the state of Victoria and Melbourne. And here, probably less developed. Is that fair to say?
Yeah, it's actually growing a lot, and with the women's the development of the women's league, it's helped a lot. Like I think it's probably the women's comp is the fastest growing sport in Queensland, I'd say. But with that has dragged the AFL along with it. Growing up in primary school, I didn't really have. I was probably definitely on that forging my own path, and it was one of those things where got hassled a lot because I was an AFL player and didn't play rugby, and I guess it got to that point where once I made the state team, like, oh, okay, you must be all right at this. It must be an all right sport if you can sort of do that with it. And then once I did go to the high school I did, was a predominantly rugby school, but we had a team that we were playing with, and we were really successful in that team, taking out multiple state championships and even competing with the best schools of other states. So I think it started off as forging my own path, and then was able to get in the same circle as a lot of really good players locally, and we were able to probably collaboratively go our own way and sort of forge our path for PBC High, which was, it was funny comparing both those experiences between primary and high school.
Okay. And then the jump from obviously into the professional leagues, is there I want to call it like a draft or some kind of intake where the new recruits are being considered and you're selected for the initial group?
Yeah. So the AFL does have a draft process, pretty similar to the NFL, but there is also academy allocations. One which was used on me, it probably didn't need to be used to its full purpose because the Gold Coast Suns were probably the team that were most keen on me. But it has, fulfilled the purpose of getting a lot of top 10 draft picks to stay on the Gold Coast, and because it is hard to sort of keep those players if other teams are keen on them. But yeah, for me, it was a weird experience. I didn't really expect much. I made the state team for the first time since under 12s, and so I needed to do that. I was probably going into that season, I probably was a little bit hesitant because I'd gone from making under 12s and then all those other years setback, didn't make it, and then under 18s I did make it. And I probably had a little thought at that point where I was like, okay, I need to either go full pelt at this or I just leave it and I move on with everything else, and ended up going at it and came out the other end being on an AFL list, which was awesome. But I guess I sort of slid under the radar, got into the AFL with the second last pick of the rookie draft, which is a separate draft to the AFL, the main draft. But yeah, it was funny because I got told before that even happened, I was actually at the club with my teammates for my first day on the day that I got rookied. And so I was sitting with a couple of players and my name popped up, and it was pretty cool scenario to be in where I'm already there, but see the name pop up while I'm around a couple of my new teammates.
Very cool. Obviously that's right in the moment. What was the reaction like from your family and so on, like those around you? Were they pretty pumped, pretty excited?
Oh yeah, super pumped. Yeah. So how it worked was the coach called me in about 2 days before, or a day before the main draft, and he said, if you slide through the main draft, we're going to take you as a rookie. And so I went home and basically told them. I remember walking home and I was like, geez, like, I don't know how I'm going to tell them this. And walk in and it was pretty crazy. Being drafted probably wasn't as big as debuting. For me, the debut was probably the biggest thing because I played, and for people that don't know about AFL, especially on the Gold Coast, when it rains, the games usually get called off, especially locally. And on the night I debuted, of course, as like Category 1 Cyclone pretty much around, and there was only like 1,000 people at the game and it was raining cats and dogs. Almost felt like I wasn't going to make it to the game because I felt like I was going to crash my car on the way. But out of those 1,000 people, a good chunk of that was my family and friends. And when I ran out for the first time, big cheer. And then when I got my first touch, an even louder cheer. And that's probably something I'll look back on pretty fondly for a while. But yeah, that was probably the moment that was best received by family and friends.
Wow, very cool.
Yeah.
Look, I mean, it's a very special combination of the fact that you're from, basically from here, and then you're on the local team as well. Has that local team been, I don't know if you know the exact dates, but has it been long established, or is it, the years of when that came to be? Gold Coast Suns? I think they're in their 11th year. I think last year was the 10th. So very young in AFL. The way the AFL's worked is it started off as VFL, and then it's slowly progressed and gotten bigger around Australia. West Coast and South Australia had a couple of teams come in first, and then Queensland and New South Wales have been the next ones that have come in. I guess you've got teams like Essendon and Carlton who are 150 years old, but with the Suns very young and haven't had much success yet. But I think they'll definitely grow into that sort of top end of the ladder. Yeah, for sure. And obviously coming in on the squad and you're on the field, and then there would be levels of experience on the field, obviously.
Yeah.
In that first year, were there people that you sort of it was sort of that experience of people that you were aware of or maybe looked up to?
Oh yeah.
And you were alongside them?
Yeah, I was lucky in my draft year. I played with a couple in the NEFL, which is the seconds team. Probably not that top end that you're sort of in awe of, but a lot of really good players. And then come getting drafted, playing with probably one of the greatest ever players in Ablett Jr, which was amazing. Took a lot from the 2 years I spent with him. Learned a lot, and he was always really willing to offer what he thought was sound advice, and was pretty reserved most of the time. But I found that I got along really well with him, and I think he just really, what he preached was doing the basics really well. And when you watch him play, you're just like, the way you make it look is, it's not that way. It's just ridiculous what he can do. But he was definitely one that I think any player at that club in that time would be in awe of, because he was already probably one of the greatest players to play the game.
Like, amazing. And I'm just thinking about, you sharing that. It helps understand, like, these are people that you know as individuals. Fans would have a different reaction. They would be in that fan celebrity mode where they'd seen them on TV. And do you think that like in the sport, is it covered widely on media? Like, would all the games be televised, for example?
Most are. It's dependent on the TV rights. I think a lot are now, especially with the rise of like KO. You pretty much have access to all those sort of games. It's probably taken time to grow to that point. But AFL is perceived as probably Australia's winter sport, I'd say. And so you do have your big calendar games early in the week on like a Thursday, Friday night. And then like all the games get played, and for a team like the Suns, we probably didn't get as many viewers. We wouldn't have that prime time. Like, we'd only play on the main field, which is the MCG, once a year. But it does go with how well you're playing as well, which is understandable. Like, if you're playing well and there's a bit of more build up and you want to accommodate to all the fans that want to watch it. So, it's dependent on how the team's going.
Yeah, nice. What about rivalries, I guess, between clubs? Does that exist?
Yeah, for sure. Suns, pretty obvious, it's Brisbane. I've been part of a couple really physical games that we've played against Brisbane, which is, it's funny because we're not really that close to each other, sort of 100k up the road from each other. But we do play for the we did play for the Q Clash Cup, which is probably, it's one of our bigger games for the year. I think I played in one or two wins, but it's always been like, I think, especially when you consider where we're at right now, Suns are a lot lower on the ladder than Brisbane are, but have always managed to be relatively competitive with them over the last couple of years as they've probably hit their prime. But I think those rivalry games sort of make what footy's all about, and especially when you're in Melbourne, there's a lot of them, and trying to have the bragging rights.
Yeah, for sure. So obviously, in the last year, it's been a bit disruptive. I think the whole season's pretty much shut down, right? They were, in terms of COVID situation. Do you know about that? Was it a total stoppage of people playing the sport for a period of time, and then they came back and started again? Yeah, well, we were involved in that. Obviously, we had to, like everyone else, we had to go in quarantine for, I'm not sure how long it was, maybe a month. But we weren't training with our teammates, which is really rare in footy. Usually you go away for your Christmas break and stuff, and you usually around your teammates. But we had to take the gym that was at the club home with us, like, separately, and do our own things at our houses. The season ended up getting sort of brought into a smaller, compact version where we played less time in quarters and less games throughout the year, I'm pretty sure. But there was probably a 2-month halt to the season. And so there was, started off as hubs, and then Gold Coast luckily became a hub. So for me, I was pretty lucky I was able to live at home and play footy. But for us, we were also still separate to the rest of society. Like, we weren't able to go and dine anywhere. We had to be pretty conservative in what we did. It was home or training or groceries, that's it. So we sort of lived under a different set of rules for a good 6 months. Wasn't able to see any friends or anything, but it was necessary to get footy up and running, because what we probably found is a lot of people's livelihood depend on AFL, especially in Melbourne. A lot of people's weeks are sort of, it revolves around how your team's going and waiting for them to play every week, and that's probably the climax in everyone's week. So it made us realise how important being in that job is, and it's an entertainment
you're in the entertainment industry. You can't fold that when you realise in that sort of circumstance.
Yeah, right. I mean, that's yeah, absolutely right. It's all that just disruption flows on. I was just trying to get a sense of like just how disruptive that can be, and it sort of continued there. But from a financial point of view, is the pay structure such that it's like a salary type arrangement? Like when you're a professional athlete, is it a salary or is it based on how many games are played and so on?
No, so it is salary. The first 2 years depends on where you take it in the draft order. For me, I was a rookie, so I only had a 1 year contract, and then from there, I was lucky enough after my first year, I did well enough to get on the senior list. But that's all negotiated through your manager. So a lot of the time it doesn't really matter how many games you play. If you're a high draft pick, you're probably a better chance being on better money just because that's the way you're projected to be. You're projected to be a long-term player and that's meant to have a big impact. For me, I was on a bit more of a modest level in terms of that, but still crazy compared when I compare it to the real world. And then in COVID, to put in reality, we pretty much took a 50% hit for those months that COVID existed, which was, I think it took our pay from 100% down to something like 65%, 65 to 70%. So it took a pretty heavy cut, and it was necessary to keep footy alive. But for me, I was in my what would turn out to be my last season thus far, and it's pretty interesting how it all worked out.
Jeez, yeah, I mean, that would be pretty abrupt. Like you're describing, pretty positive trajectory. Everything was kind of working out pretty well. And then the injury you described, maybe just could you take us through that again? Is it one match, one game, one incident, or was sort of something that came on and then you decided, no, I can't continue?
Yeah, it was progressive. Like I was able to will myself through a lot of footy with it. The perspective around it is it was a stress fracture of my navicular. Through working with the club physios and stuff, clinically it didn't show signs of that because the navicular is sort of on the inside of your foot, and I was having pain down the outside, and so that's obviously nowhere near it. And that's probably why what we thought was happening wasn't what ended up happening. And with the stress fractures, obviously it's a progressive thing. I probably would have played through it for about 6 weeks. I was hobbling around pretty badly at times, but also, like, I'm proud I was able to push through it. It's probably didn't work out to be the best thing that's ever happened to me, but I dealt with it. I felt like I played some pretty good footy and kept the senior side accountable during that time. And all you can do is play the cards you're dealt. And right now, it's given me a good perspective on what I can do outside of just playing footy. I've had to resort to doing a lot of swimming, something I probably didn't, being a coast local, like usually you love that sort of stuff. I was never big on it. And so I've had to embrace the fact that a lot of my fitness is going to come from swimming and bike riding and less impact. And so I've learned a lot of lessons along the way. It was something that obviously sucks in hindsight, but the learnings I take from, I think, is something that's going to be with me for a lot longer than, what the rehab process will be. So, everything happens for a reason. I'm a pretty firm believer in that.
Yeah, look, I mean, that's powerful to have that obviously be taken away from you because you could have continued, but then you sort of buying your time and making the best of it, right? The conditioning of an AFL athlete, I feel, it's got to be up there with one of the top. And for those that aren't aware, it's like intense cardio, right? You're probably running for nonstop for, what is it? What's the full length of a match?
Well, we have 20-minute quarters that go longer. Time on is what it's called. And so quarters can, if you're looking at the clock on game day, it can go for over 30 minutes. You do that over 4 quarters, you're doing 2 hours out on the field. Being a defender, I also didn't get as many rotations. Being a mid, you're at high intensity all the time, and so they need 2 or 3 rests a quarter. But being the defenders, we can sort of do a lot longer, not as quick, but just constant all the time. Clocked up 15Ks a lot of times playing on certain players, and it's a fair impact on the body, and that obviously contributed to my foot, and it's only getting quicker as well, which is the crazy thing. It's probably dangerous in terms of injuries, but clubs have got to adapt to it because that's just the way it's going. And as every sport does, and pretty much any sort of professional, elite environment involves, the way that you're going to do better is by doing things quicker. And so, like trial times are just going to continue to keep going down. You just got to go with it, or it's just going to work out the way it will.
So just in that sport, so you're describing quicker. Does that mean it's like, pursuing ball possession and you're actually just trying to maintain possession at all costs, and it's almost like an aggression thing? Or when you say like the time trials and things, what are you referring to there?
So in AFL, we do a lot of 2K time trials. And just to put in perspective, over my time when I first started, probably anything under 7 minutes was pretty good. You get to now, you're looking well under 6:30. Like you're trying to probably break 6 minutes if you're at that top end. Like, for me, I was sort of just over 7 minutes for a lot of it. And then I sort of broke through that glass ceiling and was able to get under 6:40. But, from what I've heard has happened at the Suns over this year, they're getting a couple players under 6 minutes, and a fair chunk of the group are in that 6:30 range. And it's pretty quick when you're running at a high speed for a long amount of time. And I guess how that converts into footy is you're reacting to things all the time. And so a lot of the time, if you can get to the ball first, you've got a better chance of winning that contest. And especially in AFL, it's all about outnumbering that contest. And so if you can get more players to that contest quicker, you got a better chance. That it's just all like the numbers are in your favour if that's the case. And so that's why everything's getting quicker in a sense.
Yeah, right. And this will be interesting for people from overseas to just get an understanding of what, where that performance improvement comes from. Is it just hard work and just putting in the time, or is there some kind of, performance enhancement somewhere? Like I'm just thinking of, lung capacity, training yourself to just be conditioned. Sometimes I think they have machines, breathing apparatus that can train you to fast track. Yeah,
well, I think all clubs do it differently. I think a lot of, but in my time at the Suns, it was definitely going down the path of hard work. We had an ex-Ironman take over our sports science program or high performance program in the last 3 years I was there, and he obviously being in that realm, a lot of Ks in the legs, and just the mentality behind it too. I think that was his perspective on it, and so it was a lot of hard work. My perspective on it is you've just got to run faster for longer. Is probably the way I see it, and I think what the difference was in me running quicker was getting stronger through the programs we have, and then that being able to be dragged out with my endurance as well. But each club's different. Some have a real heavy recovery focus. Some have like miles in the legs. Some are focused on the mentality of it. It just depends who's running your program. But it was really eye-opening to have an ex-Ironman run our programs, because there were some sessions where you're doing more than a game's work, and you really it's testing upstairs.
Yeah, that's true. I mean, Ironman would be big around the world, but there'd be some big name Australians that are top of the pack, and in terms of strength and conditioning, obviously it's endurance mainly, but whatever the edge is going to be, and in all those crossover sports. So is there anything you do recreationally now? Like obviously you have to take it easy with the body, but anything for fun?
I love golf. That's my sort of sport that I would say would be more of an indulgence for me. I love that. I've tried dabbling in surfing, because growing up in Tweed Heads, that's where the Quicksilver Pro is. So I don't mind trying to go out for a surf and go to the beach, but golf's probably been my main one. Played a lot growing up, and that was always my summer sport, and it's one of those mental sports as well. So I really enjoy that mental challenge of trying to switch on for the whole 5 hours that you're out there, and how you're going to attack a different hole. And that's probably the sport that I love most to do. And it's relaxing. It's not too taxing on your body. But I guess I love the way I sort of try to play the game, try to hit a fair way, and try and drop that handicap is something that's always in the back of your mind.
Yeah, it is. I'm amazed by that. The profession of golf, like the amount of athletes that that do that, and they pick it up, and it's like a skill. So did you have a natural inclination for golf, or did you have to learn it just like everyone else?
Yeah, probably from what I've seen, a lot of my teammates at the Suns picked it up like over the last couple of years. For me, I played growing up. I started playing sort of junior club comps from like sort of primary school, but I got told by my dad like a couple of years ago that I picked up a club and just hit a ball when I was like 3 or 4 or something, so, and just hit the ball over the fence. So I guess I was always just going to sort of play that sport from what I could tell, and yeah, just over that time gotten stronger and progressed more, and yeah, I've never really gone too seriously with it, but have gotten to that point where I've been able to represent my club sometimes, and yeah, I guess having that foundation really helps, because I've noticed a lot of my teammates that were trying to build their swing at 20, 22, and for me, I sort of know how to tweak my swing if I'm doing something wrong. Yeah,
oh, that's cool. I mean, obviously, one of the main questions people might have is around, becoming a professional athlete and having skills. There could be a question saying how much of it's just natural gift and a bit of physical ability, and then no matter what sport you take on, with some hard work, then you're going to be further ahead.
Yeah.
I don't know. Do you have any thoughts on either yourself or your teammates? Do you believe in like natural ability and talent, or is it just hard work 100%? Or where do you fit? What are you thinking?
I think it's relevant to different people. I do believe in genuine talent because I've seen it 100%. But I'm probably the believer in hard work. For me, I was probably more of a skillful player. That's probably what got me into a professional level of the sport. And so I see that transferable between golf and footy. If my kicking's off, then I know that I'm not pointing at my target or doing something like that. If I'm playing golf, I know that I'm opening up my swing too much and trying to hit it too far. And so I can sort of convert that, and every sport I've done, always spent a lot of time on it. It probably wasn't good for school at all, but if I was playing footy on a certain day, I'd be umpiring, kicking at goals, playing my game, helping out, and just like if I was having a day at footy, I'd be there all day. If I was at golf, I'd be playing first thing in the morning, and I'd be practicing for 3 hours until my dad finished. It's one of those things where I've just always put myself in the position where if I was going to do something, I'm going to go full throttle at it, and I want to learn all the time and keep developing. And I've still got that flame in my belly to constantly do that when I go play golf. And I think that's it's humbling to have that in your life, something where you can constantly be better at something, and I love that. But yeah, I guess to answer your question, I'm a firm believer in hard work, because that's how I got in the AFL. And what I realised probably over the journey is there's a compounding interest. There were things I was doing when I was a lot younger that weren't straight away happening for me. Like I was never the quickest growing up, and so I'd be doing 7 a.m. Sprint training with the school running team at my high school on a Wednesday I did it for 3 years, I reckon. I got to the last year, I was like, Jesus, I'm not getting any quicker. Like, I'm doing all the work, but I'm not getting quicker. Fast forward another 2 years or so, and I'm in my draft year, and all of a sudden, with the strength and everything, it all comes together. And I guess I perceive that hard work as a compounding interest. I'm going to do something today, and it might not help me today, but I know in the long term it's gonna give me an edge. And so I guess that's the substance that gives me the feeling that it's based off hard work for me, anyways.
Yeah, I mean, just hearing you describe it like that, it feels like it's inside. It's you experienced it, and you've got it, and then you could almost transfer it into any domain that you wanted to, and now you've got, I'm sure, many options. But in the world of, I guess, in the world of business or life beyond sport, do you feel like that lends itself in a way that you can use right away, or are you still trying to see how it translates, if that makes sense? Like, there's sport and there's athletics, but then there's the world that's kind of operates in a different way. There's not a lot of people, people may not be it's probably a game in numbers. Like an athlete might be 1%, with skill and hard work, and then there's 99% of everyone else that's going through a daily routine. I'm just curious about how that's been for you to transition into a role that's sort of it's just different.
Yeah, I think that idea around learning, and that's only going to happen through working hard, is transferable for sure. Probably where I can see it transferring most is in my studies, because I had to work really hard to get to the point I have to be able to match my study output with the physical exertion of professional sport as well, and mental as well. Like for us, we weren't winning too much, and that can be really taxing on your mental lifestyle as well. Not saying that I was feeling shit about life or anything, but it's just one of those things where you really need to keep picking yourself up, and that momentum, once you do start winning, it builds, but as soon as you lose, you sort of lose that momentum. And so you got to keep, and if you're losing, there's always stuff to improve on. So I guess what I've seen in the business realm is that the hard work is going to pay off, and I've seen it happen over the last couple of days. I've been working at PainPod for a month, but there's certain things that on 2 weeks ago I probably was trying to work on. I had no idea what I was doing, and then today just a flick of the switch, and I was like, okay, that's how that works. And yeah, I guess it does. I do see it as transferable, and it might be the way I learn sort of things, and that I've got to repetitively keep doing it until it sinks in. But I think it doesn't come off the back of just sort of cruising through. You got to really exert yourself in whatever you're doing.
Yeah, very cool. I think that can be something that anybody can take away. Obviously, it's just people have their ups and their downs, and they have their goals. But I'm curious about how you measure your success. Do you go day by day, or are you more of like a long-term thinker? And what in terms of your next steps, are you thinking like months ahead, or are you thinking a couple of years ahead? How does your mind work?
Yeah, for me, I probably don't look forward too far. I guess a lot of the things that I've been able to do over the past couple of years, I never would have thought I'd be able to do it. Going in my draft year, I never thought I would have been drafted, let alone be able to play over 60 AFL games. And so it's probably not, I've got that drive to be successful at what I want to do, but I don't think I count it as successful until I've done it, or I can look back and look at it fondly and go, geez, that really, and that's probably is that compounding interest ideal in my head. I've got ideas of what I want to do and where I want to go, but what I've learned over time is that it's all about opportunity, and I can't look forward and guess what that opportunity is going to be. I've just got to take whatever's there. PainPod's a perfect example. I didn't really have any other options for work, and I wanted to be in the business realm, and so working with Sandy popped up and I took it, and I've been able to learn a lot of things in the past month. Even with moving out of the AFL professional landscape and move into a more of a semi-professional area. Like I'm going from playing halfback, which is not a bigger role, as midfield, which is what I'm going to play at Southport Sharks, and that gives an opportunity to have a bigger role to play, and probably more of a leadership role as well. And I can try and look at what I will be able to do for them right now, but I also don't want to put a limit on that. I want to be able to sort of just go with how I feel about it, because there's nothing saying that after round one my foot pulls up sore and I've got to pull back for a couple of months, but there's nothing saying I can't go out there and try and be the best player I can every week, whether that's best on ground, or whether that's being the trademark player of the week, or whether that's just being a consistent contributor. I guess I probably just don't want to put that expectation on myself. One, for if you don't reach it, it can become a disappointment, which I don't think I'm too phased by, but I also don't want to put a glass ceiling on what I'm capable of either.
Yeah, that's really, it's just neat to see the thought process there about how you would tackle that challenge, and and it's just a matter of time. So there's no pressure. And do you celebrate little moments of success? Say you've picked up, you're in the business world now and you're learning new things. Is that the type of thing you got an appreciation for? You say, you know what, this is a new journey, or this is a new chapter?
Yeah. Well, what I was about to say is that it's probably one of those things that pops up in my head all the time, but I probably don't really recognize it too much. Like I'm constantly visualizing what I think I can be capable of. But yeah, there's definitely times where I think you need to be able to give yourself that little tick. Yesterday I was able to run the office with just Sandy and myself, and I found that to be massive. I started off the day and I stuffed up 3 or 4 things straight away, and the day just was going to be a nightmare, I thought. But by the end of the day, I felt really comfortable, and I probably learned a lot from those mistakes. And that's probably something in footy you also learn, is you're not going to learn unless you make those mistakes. You sort of learn from losses more than you do wins a lot of the time. So yeah, I think those little ticks you need to be able to acknowledge, and that's something that I've picked up on a lot over my time. We had a presentation come in from the Resilience Project. I'm not sure if you heard of it, but it's about rewiring the brain to be more positive and more accepting of what's happened in your day. And so what I do with my 2 sisters and my partner is we send each other 3 things that went well in the day, and I think that's something that's sort of wired my brain differently, just to see the positives. It's not about going home and going, this went wrong, that went wrong, life sucks. It's about acknowledging what you've done well, because they can be such small things. It makes you realise how lucky you are. Very lucky to live on the Gold Coast, and I'm very lucky to have the experience and opportunities I have. So I guess that's been a pretty big part of it, and that's something that's taken over the AFL landscape pretty heavily. But yeah, to being able to implement in your lifestyle, you can definitely notice the difference.
Yeah, that's I think that's definitely something for people to look up. You know, the idea of just three things.
Yeah, for sure.
And it's on a daily basis to help you, I guess, appreciate, you know, that you are making gains, and it's like that, you know, cumulative effect, like you said, a little bit now, but over time, you're way far ahead than. So you stick with it.
Yeah, and I guess for me, it's like today I'll probably just tick off a couple of small things. Like I was able to do one of my first podcasts and was able to do a certain thing at work, and then who knows, by the end of the year it might be close a big sale, or was able to have best on ground today in footy. It doesn't matter what size the success is, it's a good thing that happened in your day, and it's about accepting it and recognising it. And yeah, that's important for your mental, to keep you going every day and looking for what's the next thing that you can tick off and keep building on it.
That's brilliant. Yeah, I'm taking a lot of pointers and just see how people what techniques, like the little life hacks, you know.
Yeah, they are. Yeah.
And they can be a bit fun and lighthearted, you know, but they can help a lot. So
yeah, of course.
Little tips. So obviously, yeah, we appreciate you coming in and sharing all this stuff. I mean, just thoughts of yourself and the sport back again. Like, do you consider yourself a fan of the sport? Do you turn on and watch some of the big names, or do you take a bit of a break, given that you were, you know, inner circle with everything? Maybe do you watch another sport as a bit of a distraction, or?
Yeah, I'm a massive sports fan. Yeah, a bit of a sports snuff. AFL is probably something I've been able to look with a different lens since I've been outside of it. I like the other day I watched a really good game that it was Brisbane versus Geelong, and I think Lincoln McCarthy kicked the game-winning goal to beat his old side. And so like sort of games like that where there's a bit on the line and it just sort of has a massive climax, that's sort of the stuff where I remember playing and I get pretty excited by it. I love watching golf as well, but I think for me the biggest one's been since I got out of the professional side, because we're doing so much vision midweek, you're constantly analysing everything. I'd go to a game with my girlfriend who's from Brisbane and go watch Brisbane play, and she'd be saying, oh, geez, like that was such a good goal. And I'd be like, oh, did you see what happened over here? Like he did this and this and this and that, created that and that and that. And it just made me realise I was just so on all the time when I was watching a game and trying to break it down. Whereas when you're playing footy, you play it because you love it and you want to have fun. And I'm sort of loving being able to watch a game and just go, yeah, that was a good goal, or just see what the fans see. I'm sure once I get back into playing, I'll probably pick that back up again. But even golf, just what they can do on that sort of stage with fans watching and huge amounts of money on the line is pretty interesting. So I think I'll always look at those sports through different lenses based on different times of my life. But I'm definitely I love being on the fan side of the fence for sure, as much as I want to get back on field and playing in front of those crowds and,
very cool.
Contributing.
And maybe just to touch on the loyalty aspect, are people like club fans for life? Like, is there any dual club supporters out there, or you choose a club and go with it?
Yeah. It's funny because it's probably given that, and you're dead right. Like, people are like a family line of supporting a club. Got many friends that Richmond's their first team, and Gold Coast Suns are always a second team, was what I took from when I was playing for them. And that's just based on how young they are. Like, I know as the sport grows up here, they're going to get more fans, but especially in Victoria, you've got teams that have been around for 150 years, and they've got a pretty good success rate, a lot of premierships and stuff, and that's what intrigues a lot of people, success. So yeah, it's definitely one of those sort of loyal sports, but you do get your bandwagoners, I think, especially around here, that people don't commit to a team, and so you get that. But also, I had my time where I bandwagoned on the Brisbane Lions when they won 3 in a row in the 2000s, and they had some amazing players in that team. But yeah, because Dad sort of brainwashed me into being a Richmond supporter, I think I jumped on Brisbane to almost piss him off a little bit, and then jumped back on, and yeah, and now I could probably say I'd support the Suns, or even just not just look at it from a very neutral standpoint and just say I like that team because of what they're doing. But in terms of AFL, it's pretty loyal code, I'd say.
All about the game.
Yeah.
Look, that's good. It's been an interesting little spotlight. Obviously, people can look into it and hopefully tune in if it's overseas. I'm sure there's ways to access some of the stuff, and maybe some highlights. There's some great highlights out there. Yeah.
I've seen some good highlight reactions from people in America. And it's cool. It's cool seeing that perspective, because it makes you realize what we're doing on a pretty national scale, and how other probably fans of different sports perceive it. And I think it can be seen as a really skillful but also brutal sport.
Have you had a chance to travel at all? Obviously, you've been busy with this career, but anywhere overseas, or either nearby or far away?
Yeah. I guess every off season I've tried to try my best to travel. Being in AFL, been able to travel Australia through footy. But I've been able to go to, one thing I was able to was play in China for the first China game ever. Didn't go our way. We got done by Port Adelaide pretty badly, but to be part of that and realise what some of these international sports people do is pretty insane. Playing in Shanghai, and it was like an 11-day trip, like a week-long trip in between games and stuff, and playing in a different country, them not really knowing what's going on. So it was cool to play in that from the sporting side, but I've also been lucky enough to travel with some friends to Thailand, Bali, and Europe. Yeah, Europe and UK a little bit. Definitely can do a bit more of it, but that's obviously probably on the back burner for a little bit. It's a good opportunity to see more of what Australia has to offer anyways, and there's always somewhere to see, especially around Queensland, I think, which is awesome.
Very cool. That's interesting. The international piece around just on that game, was it a business development thing, do you think, in order to introduce the sport to a new audience, a new country, just as a bit of a test? Yeah,
I'd say so. I guess AFL's trying to go internationally in more ways than one. They developed the AFLX a couple of years ago. I was lucky enough to play in that game. It's probably a bit more of a big bash form of AFL, which was really cool to be a part of. That wasn't at an international standpoint, but I could definitely see that this was a big part of trying to go global. And even, I think, back in the day, some AFL games were hosted in London, and just like exhibition games to get different countries interested, because the AFL is constantly trying to grow, because they know that it's such a unique game that it has that ability to grow. So yeah, to be part of a China game was pretty awesome, because there are some ties to players in our comp. One of my teammates and good friends, Kalamache, he had bloodlines that go back to China, and so for him that was something that was pretty cool. Yeah, I think there's always going to be links in terms of nationality to the AFL, and I think they want to try and make that global because they know that if you've got athletes coming from places like America, if they can get involved, it's going to be a crazy sport. You just watched the Super Bowl the other day, and some of the athletes involved in that are just insane. And so with what the AFL is going through right now is probably a growth of trying to get different athletes involved so that it can become more of a spectacle, and you've got just these unique players playing. The steeplechasers, and basketball's probably a good one where people have gone from that into AFL. Even rugby, there's been some players have come across, but I think they know that the benefits of having different athletes involved means that you're going to see different things in a game. Even Mason Cox being involved from America, just, really unique footballer, and he's been able to do some amazing things. So having those sort of stories involved is pretty cool, and I think that's why they want to make it more global so they can entice more people in.
That's neat. Yeah, I mean, that's probably the business side of the sport. They're looking to share the experiences and the excitement of it all. So it'd be interesting to see where even that sport goes, and I'm sure we'll have opportunity to get some more perspectives on it. We had a guest before that had some experience with the WAFL, and is that something that do you think is that just emerging in terms of the women's league, or is that where do you think that's at in terms of maturity of being established and active on the Gold Coast?
Yeah, the AFLW's it's grown immensely. It's funny because I've gone from the point of view growing up, we'd have a couple of girls play in, I think it gets about 14s or 16s, and there'd be girls playing in boy teams, and it shouldn't really be that way. Like, it should be that they're just playing AFL, but there'd be one or two girls that would play in these teams that are full of boys. And now what's happened from that is there's junior grades all the way through that are filled with women as well, which is awesome. And so it's had a really rapid rise to go from that point where you've got girls playing in teams that are filled with boys to just entire comps that are filled with girls. It's one of those crazy things where netball is actually the most popular sport in Australia. And so I think it's trying to convert a lot of that, a lot of those sort of players over, and so it can become such a big sport where they've got just this massive pool to sort of draft from and create a really strong sport. What I've noticed over the last couple of years is the skill level has gone through the roof with the AFLW. A lot of that, I think you could notice at the start which players played and pushed through that sort of playing in boys teams and played all the way through. There were some really significantly good players, skillfully, IQ wise. But now it's like, it's so condensed. You've got so many really good players, and it's really competitive to get on a list. And so I think there's definitely going to be a point where they just keep going up. But from what I've seen this year, it's becoming really exciting, and being able to see girls do what they're doing, it's pretty insane. There's some crazy goals being kicked, marks being taken. It's awesome. In Queensland, I think, is probably the part that's contributed the most. The local league's really strong, and that probably the gap between the local league and that top professional league is not as big a jump as it probably would be from the QAFL level to AFL level at this in a men's sense. So I think Queensland's probably almost sort of leading the front in terms of that space of growing and becoming really strong in that area.
That's neat. Yeah, and all those changes, it's not a huge time span. Like, it's all happening, like you said, pretty quick. So
yeah, really quick.
You check back year on year. It's pretty impressive. So look, I think that's an amazing insight to it. We'll definitely share the links to some of the highlights. For those that aren't yet familiar with the sport, there's some spectacular moments, and even just the career path, I think, is fascinating. So
yeah, of course, yeah.
Jesse, I really appreciate you sharing all that today. Do you want to just tell us a little bit? So to follow along with the website for the company that you're working for?
Yeah. So PainPod Australia is obviously a sort of pain-free sort of drug device that focuses on the relieving of pain and rehabilitation by activating the muscles.
Perfect.
And that's devices and pads. And then they've also got affiliate programs where if you get involved and you refer people, you can get some discounts on that. You can find it on the website at PainPod.com, I think. There's an Australian, US, and UK website. You can order there and call the officers if you want to talk more about it. But
that's perfect.
That's the area I've been working in, and it's been pretty cool seeing how it changes people's lives and makes their lifestyle pain-free.
Yeah, drug-free and anyone can check it out. So guys, check out that website. And Jesse Joyce, thanks so much for coming on the show today, and happy to have you back anytime.
No, thanks for having me.
All right.